everyone, and welcome back to Empower Her podcast. So glad that you joined us for another episode. This is episode 10. Whoop, whoop. We are approaching the end of season 1, bittersweet, but don't worry, season 2 will be coming out this coming September. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. Of course, I am your host, London, and then we also have our other host, London. Say what's up to the peeps, Lon.
Hey, y'all.
And let's see. Today, we have a very interesting episode. This one is going to be really fun. I'm actually really excited for it. So as you know, on our previous episode, we were discussing that video that had kind of been circulating on social media with a sermon from T.D. Jakes. And he was kind of saying some things about the kind of the phrase, I don't need a man. He said quite a lot, and we'll definitely use this episode to kind of recap what was discussed last episode. And, you know, we went so deep into it that we actually ran out of time and had to do a part 2 because this was just such a riveting discussion. So this is what to expect for this episode today. This is part 2 of the I Don't Need a Man discussion that we were having last episode. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce 2 very special guests that have joined us on the show today. One is a returning guest. He was on a previous episode, Mr. Richard Reed, who likes to go by Rich. Advisor and mentor Richard Reed is here with us today. I'll let him say hello.
Hey, how we doing?
We are doing good. So glad that you're here, Rich. As I said before, we're just always happy to have, a male perspective on the show, as London and I are both women. And, sometimes it's just nice to hear from the other side. So I'm very happy that you joined us today. And our other very special guest is professional Jessica Shepherd. Hey, girl.
Hi.
Hey. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Of course. And I like to always give our guests just a second, whether you want to, just kind of introduce yourself or just give our listeners a little bit about who you are.
I am just someone who's always been invested in trying to understand not only myself, but also how my existence relates to other people's existences. So I have always worked in education, and that's the field that I work in now. And that work allows me to continue to kind of do this learning because children will teach you everything, right? And also, if you're good at the job, you can learn a lot from it, and hopefully they might learn something from you too. And so these kinds of conversations are really beneficial because hopefully there's something that I can then take back to the folks who are counting on me to bring them something that they can actually use in the world.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And hello, fellow educator. Okay. Yes, I have also been an educator for the past 3 years. I've done preschool teacher. I did first grade, and my first year was kindergarten, and loved every single year. Just, oh my goodness, just working with children is such a beautiful thing. And I love how you mentioned that we're really learning from them. Like, most of the job is us learning from them, and we give them a little something here and there.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, thank you again for being here. So, and I will say that you kind of, or at least for myself, you pretty much popped this whole thing off for me, because your page was the first page that I saw this video of T.D. Jakes, saying what he was saying. And then the comments that you had that followed, I was like, yes. Wait, we need to get her on the show, because you were just speaking, and I loved everything that you were saying about, that clip. So that's the reason you're here. So again, thank you for coming. So really quick, let's just go over what we discussed last episode. So of course, everyone, hopefully you are aware and you've seen the video. If not, check out our last episode. I played the clip so you can hear exactly what it is that we're referencing. But Pastor T.D. Jakes, where we left off last on our last episode was us discussing how he said that Black women are climbing the corporate ladder, but we're losing our families. That was a big thing for me. At that point, it was like, oh, wait, what? And him just saying that women are out here saying that they don't need a man and wondering why men are shying away from them. So the first thing I want to do is kind of just pose this question to start us off, and this question will be for you, Jessica, as well as Richard. So first question is, how do you define femininity?
Well, honey, I will say that question to me is twofold, because while I do think that there should be space held for femininity and like feminine energy, I am someone who has not always been, and even to this day, I'm not always invested in femininity, at least in the traditional sense. I think what many people would understand femininity to be is being in tune with yourself, and in turn being able to then connect with others, and empathy and nurturing, and being able to connect with self, body, spirit, nature, God, all these kinds of different things. And I think all those are true. I think feminine energy can be forceful. I think it is forceful in most cases. I think that feminine energy can come in any form, any body, and it can be powerful in any form, in any body. And so at this age, I'm kind of moving more in femininity than I would when I was younger. When I was young, I was very much like dirt and bugs kind of kid, like very much dusty ball of dirt. But I loved it there, and the dirt loved me back. But at this age now, I like feel more comfortable in femininity, and so for me, at this point, it just means assurance in myself, not having to check in with any other person's energy. I can be secure in mine because I know this enough. I know that it's powerful. It can do the job that I need it to do. But also, I'm excited that for me, feminine energy also means that I can meet the need of any environment that I'm in, regardless of what that need is. And so sometimes for me, my feminine energy is assertive, and my feminine energy is, I guess I'll say, probably a bit more curt and to the point than I think some people would like to say that femininity can be. But I don't like the idea that walking and existing in feminine energy means that you are dripping in honey and lace, like super soft, feathery words. I think it can be all the
Definitely agree. I definitely agree. And I asked you that question, and Rich, I'm going to give you a chance to definitely speak your piece on that. But I asked that question specifically because in the clip, T.D. Jakes says that women are no longer being applauded for femininity, but they're being applauded for, being mean, being nasty, all these other things that he was saying. And I kind of equated that to, so you're saying that us, that Black women being in the climbing the corporate ladder is equivalent to us, no longer being applauded for our femininity. Like it wasn't making sense to me. So that's why I wanted to start off with just how do you define femininity? So I'll pass it over to Rich. Do you want to respond to that question, Rich?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, that was one of my questions I was actually going to ask you, London, because based off the response you had in your previous episode, I was like, wait, time out. What is femininity to you? But yeah, I definitely agree with Miss Shepherd all the way. I really can't say I want to add on too much to it because, for me being, of the opposite gender,
right.
I'm attracted to, woman that's, that's in touch with her femininity. Like everything she said, like that turns my senses on. I think, what had me to raise an eyebrow in her response was, she said, her femininity could be assertive. I don't know, what does that look like?
Okay. All right. Before we move on, Jessica, did you want to kind of dive into what you meant by, sometimes your femininity is assertive?
I can. So for me, when I say my femininity can be assertive, what I mean is a bunch of things actually. But what I really mean is that when people think of femininity, they often think of the ways that a person can be with, attract, and satisfy men.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes that looks like hushing, that looks like accepting things that are not acceptable, period. But it also can sometimes look like swallowing your words, as old folks might say, like just taking a back seat, swallowing your words, leading with a very soft kind of disposition, which is all fine. But for me, my femininity shows up in a way that is very assertive in that I don't feel the need to reduce myself for any environment. I don't feel the need to try to morph into what someone may or may not be attracted to. So now, like, I literally see on the internet that there are coaches that you can go to, and people will try to teach you how to catch a man, and they're like feminine coaches, and they'll teach you how to put your legs in the car so that your legs look super demure, and your toes are pointed well, and how to make sure that when you're getting dressed in the morning, your curls are coiffed and all these kinds of things. Which if they love it, I love it for them. But for me, my femininity looks like when I'm in a space and my identity is that I am a woman. When I'm in a space, my femininity looks like I have something to say, and the reason why I hope I'm at a table is because what I have to say is valuable, and I'm going to take up the space to say it. I don't feel the need to shrink for anyone because of my gender identity. And so for me, assertive femininity looks like my purpose matters in the world. I'm going to use it for the good that I hope it can do. Even if that means that other people are upset by it, even if that means that other people are not attracted to it, that's okay. For me, there's no point in even having conversations about quote unquote like feminine energy if it doesn't have a job to do. And if I have a job to do, I'm going to be the best at it, and I've got to get it done no matter what. So that assertion can look like when we're in a meeting and I'm maybe like the only woman amongst men, speaking up for myself, sometimes like being willing to get a little spicy if that needs to happen. Assertion can look like advocating for myself, not in a way that's always combative, but these are the things that I need. Because sometimes women aren't always allowed to even say what they need and say what they're feeling and say what they've experienced.
Right.
For me, assertion can be when we're talking about someone like TD Jakes, assertion can be, I'm getting up and getting hell out this church, because what are we even talking about?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I agree with everything that you said. And I think that you put that very, very well. And that kind of brings me to where I was going next with it, because
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Because when it comes to feminine energy, I don't think feminine energy is about, and this is just me personally playing devil's advocate as always. I think when it comes to feminine energy is more so just being a nurturer and being able to receive, and also being sure of yourself. So you do know when you walk into a room, your presence is known just based off of your feminine energy. And then being masculine is where the assertion comes in, because you can't talk about being feminine without being masculine. And so we have both. So when you're masculine, you are assertive. When you're operating from your masculine energy, you are assertive, and you are on the go, and you are in that mindset where you just want to get things done, because that's what the masculine energy is there for. And there should be an equal balance between two. So just to say that because you're assertive, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't also be feminine, but that's not what feminine energy is about. When you're operating from your feminine energy, you're more of a nurturer and you're more receiving. So I think those two are very different.
Well, I will say who designated, assertion as masculinity. Like when did assertion just women, when did femininity become exclude assertion.
You're adding the feminine and the masculine energy, and you're adding it to like a female or a male. And in this aspect, we're not talking about a gender. We're just talking about your energy, because even as a man, you can have your feminine and masculine energy and you'll operate from one or the other, because there should be an equal balance. So I don't think that your feminine or masculinity should be attached to a gender.
Well, can I add something to that piece?
Yes, please.
Can I speak to that point? I think that whenever we talk about feminine versus masculine, we either consciously, subconsciously, out loud, or quietly assign those things to gender and to sex. And so even, for example, the language used before was you're operating from your, right? And so we often ascribe feminine to femme, woman, at least, or like femme presenting person, and masculine to the total opposite side of the spectrum. I don't think of, in terms of energy, I think that energy is fluid. I don't think that it exists in terms of these two very stark, like, sides of any kind of a spectrum. And so for me, I don't feel like when I'm moving in the world, I'm moving toward another side of my existence. I also think that in terms of, I don't know which of the Londons it was, but someone just said something. One of y'all just said something about who says, right?
Yeah.
Society says and patriarchy says. And so it would be dishonest of me to pretend that when people usually talk about feminine and masculine, they're not usually also talking about sex. They're not usually also talking about gender. And which is why when I'm from even childhood, when people met me from birth, not only did they assign me a sex and assign me a gender, they also assigned me femininity. And that's why people were telling me to sit with my legs crossed, and I had to wear frilly, fuzzy, itchy socks to certain kinds of events on certain holidays, because they were assigning femininity to me. And then they were telling me, this is what we think femininity should look like. And so that's where it comes from. It's not even just that these things exist in society, is that we take on those roles, we take on those assignments, and then we dole them out. We like dish out the deck to our youth, our children, whoever it is that we're taking care of and responsible for. And so I think that for me, my femininity, the way I language it as assertive, is because I want to be clear that for me, my femininity can, is, and will always be assertive. I don't want to have to move into masculine energy. I don't want to have to move toward masculinity, because for me, femininity isn't a kind of monolithic thing. It also, though, to me, that language isn't mutually exclusive. And so I like the idea of me being able to say something and it feeling like an oxymoron, because I hope that that means that I'm pushing myself and others out of a kind of stifling box that we tend to exist in. And that's not something I'm saying to anyone else. That's something for me too, right? I have children that I'm around, and there's a noise in the back of my head that often kind of takes on those same kinds of assignments, as far as I'm assigning this child a sex, gender, and femininity. And so now I have behavior that I want this child to perform for me. I have to move beyond that. And if I'm going to move beyond that, I have to make sure that not only are my actions intentional, but my language is intentional. And so I love the language of my assertive femininity, because I want people to recognize that when they're around me, that's what they're experiencing. It's not me moving in masculinity, it's my feminine assertion.
Right. Understood. And I like how you discussed, when I asked that question, who was it that designated it? And you talked about how society and patriarchy and all of that. And I was actually reading an article earlier that was kind of discussing the social role theory, how we've come up with these roles for each gender. And then, when one steps outside of it, they're now, being patronized for it. And something that Patricia Hill Collins said, and this is a distinguished professor at UMD. She specializes in race, class, and gender. And she said the gender ideology not only creates ideas about femininity, but also shapes conceptions of masculinity. So when we kind of put this frame around what femininity is, we're also putting a frame around, what masculinity is. So I like how you said that you don't want to be put into that box, and I definitely agree with you there. So we're going to move on to another question, but before I move on, I just want to see if Rich or London, if you have anything else to add to that.
No, you guys did. You guys said it.
Yeah. Like I came in wanting to be super combative, but I think Miss Shepherd. I think I agree with Miss Shepherd. I'm not going to comment.
Okay. All right. Well, I am going to pose another question. But I just getting back to what, the main reason why we're here today, that whole video circulating of TD Jakes. Another thing that he said was that this is breaking all order of the sociological culture. And when I heard that, I immediately said, what order? Is it the order that women are supposed to need or depend on men? And, when did that become the law? And when a woman steps out of that and is not dependent on a man financially, why is she now, breaking the order of sociological culture? And I like how, Jessica, earlier you mentioned that you don't shrink yourself, for anyone. And I felt you there, because it feels like what they want is for women to minimize their success in order to make men more comfortable. And I think, oh, I see a hand from Richard. Go ahead, Rich.
No, continue what you have to say. I promise I'm gonna be quick.
Okay, I was wrapping it up, but yeah, that's just what I was getting from, the video, with the negative connotation with the I don't need a man thing. I'm independent, I can provide for myself. I need a man for other things outside of financial stability. And I feel like, they want us to, as women, to minimize our success in order to make them feel comfortable. And in my head, I'm like, I don't feel that women need to shrink themselves for anyone. If I am a strong woman that can provide for herself financially, how am I breaking, the order of sociological culture because I'm climbing the corporate ladder? And in turn, TD Jake said that our climbing of the corporate ladder is resulting in us losing our families. I just didn't get the connection there. So I'm gonna pause right there. And Rich, I'm gonna let you speak whatever you got to say on that.
All right, cool. So I actually went back and found like the entire sermon, because the snippet that I heard, did come off a bit, rude and negative. But actually listening to the full sermon, I'm not going to say that he's saying that women should downsize or shrink themselves. I think his message was more so, we men, we have to do better as a gender. By us not, holding our end of the bargain, we're allowing women to fill the shoes of masculinity. Because he also stated that, women are not being celebrated for their femininity. They're being appraised for their masculinity. And it honestly is the harsh truth. However, I feel like he also dug himself in a hole where he said, or where he mentioned women don't need a man, or women saying, I don't need a man. That stuck out to me because it's like, so what? I don't need a woman. Like, what's the big deal? But listening to the responses and seeing some of the comments of other people, I think, his words was actually just taken out of, just taken out of proportion. It wasn't everything that was commented was based off, one's perspective, actually the entire situation. Whereas I, as a man, feel like, to each his own, and believe that if a woman doesn't feel like she needs a man to provide, that's cool. But I don't think she's saying I don't need a man at all.
Jessica or London, did you want to chime in on that?
No, I had the same viewpoint.
Yeah, and I know that you we discussed earlier, that thing where people, especially social media, they'll put out a clip and everyone kind of go crazy off of that clip, but a lot of people don't take the time to really dive into the entire thing, and then you might get a different message out of it. So it seems like both you and Rich kind of went back and watched the full thing and maybe got a different message out of it.
Yeah, because he was saying something totally different from the beginning. Because when right before that part, he was saying how men pour into women and, we preserve and make things better. Basically, we multiply. We're there to accompany them in a good way. So it's just, and then after that, it just went off into that little tidbit, and that's what was put.
Okay. Well, I'm going to pose another question. Why is, or do you believe that a woman seeking a man for things outside of financial stability, why is that intimidating or demasculating? Because in my head, that just sounds like fragile masculinity. If my being able to provide for myself makes you feel, less than, so that's my question.
I don't think, I can't speak for all men. I'm going to try to keep it as neutral. I don't think, the majority of men out here are looking for a woman to provide for. The reason why I say that is because it's bad enough on us. It's hard enough on us anyway. So just having that type of mindset, that's is a way of projecting, insecurity. I think, most men are out here just actually looking for a woman to appreciate that man for who he is. And not just for who he is, but, at times what he can do that she can't do for herself. I don't think anybody, one gender is more superior than the other. I don't care what society says. I also strongly believe that when I strongly believe that, society are definitely weaponizing, that statement. I don't need a man. I don't need a man. I don't need a man to pay my bills. For me, I think that's awesome. Cool. Well, continue to stack up. We want to stack up together and we want to, build something together. That's just me because I'm definitely secured and confident within myself. But for those men that, shy away from, I think there's a deeper cause than, just providing financially, because being able to provide financially doesn't make you a man. You could provide financially and still be an asshole, still be insensitive, still be not in touch with your emotions. You can still lack communication. Don't mean because you pay bills mean you big King Kong of the household. Like it's for me. I think it's more than that.
Agreed. I like your take on that, Rich. Before I say anything, Jessica or London, do you guys want to add to that?
I will say, there's a lot to say. One thing that I recently was talking with someone about, I was talking to a friend about just dating, and they were saying how the dating pool has pee in it, and it was like, yeah, it does. Honey, I mean, the yellowest.
Yes.
Oh, it does. It really
they were saying how they're frustrated, and it took a dark turn. It was a regular conversation, and it turned into, yeah, because people just want to use you, people just want to get what you got, and sometimes these women, they only want to. And I was like, oh my god, like it was like yoking me up, and I was like, hey, are you okay? Like, are you all right? And we ended up talking about how I found it alarming and like discouraging that was my friend's take, because it seemed like, number one, you already made your head up. You already made your mind up about who even is pursuing, who you're pursuing, what they want, what their intentions are. But number two, it was giving me very much like, I feel like I'm hearing you say Instagram quotes out loud. Like, gotta protect you. Sir, cut it out. Like, everybody calm down. You're making predictions about a person that doesn't exist yet. You've not met them. We don't even know if they exist. Right. And so the notion that you need to protect yourself from a fictitious person who wants to get what you got is wild. And the other part was, respectfully, we had to discuss, like, you make $100,000. I don't think that people are out here on the hunt for $100,000 heirs. I just don't think that you're at the top of the list in terms of people want to get what you got. So I'm saying this to say, I find that one of the things that I do struggle with is sometimes there's this dichotomy of like, people want to get what you got, and you got to protect yourself because, gold diggers and people's intentions are impure. But then also a lot of those people will lean into, well, my job, in this case, my job as a man is to provide and protect. So I struggle with understanding, like, at what point are you no longer providing and protecting? At what point do you feel like now you're tricking? And also, what's the problem? Because my core belief is that almost every almost every relationship is transactional. Even pure, true love to me is transactional, in that I'm offering you pure and true love, and you're going to offer me something back, either your love or your respect or ethics, or, you know what I mean? Like, there's some sort of something that I hope that you're offering me back because I'm giving you something, which is why when someone doesn't reciprocate, it's like, oh my God, there's resent now because I gave you something and you didn't respect what I gave you, and you didn't give me anything back, or at least not what I wanted. And so for me, I don't ask for anything unless I'm willing to make an offering, because my core belief is that this is a transaction. So when I roll up in a Burger King, I can't just take a burger. I got to get them people my $2. So for me, in terms of you asking for something, if a person is out here providing for themselves and they're able to do those kinds of things, I think that the question becomes, well, what are you going to ask for now? Because a lot of men specifically aren't really clear on what they can offer outside of money. They aren't really clear on what they do outside of providing financial security. So I literally just heard something today where someone talked about how at a point in his life, he couldn't provide financial security. And what ended up happening was he became very angry and upset with himself, obviously, but obviously that kind of pours out onto others and onto his conversations and interaction. And the relationship soured because it was like, you don't even know all the things I want to do for you. And because I can't do them, like there's this feeling building within me. And I think that the journey that person is on now is, I'm trying to recognize that I had and have worth outside of what I could or couldn't buy for somebody or do for somebody. And so it's weird to me that people find problems with women who are able to provide for themselves, because it's like, well, you recognize that you are valuable and worthy outside of what you could do for a woman. You must. You have to. And so honestly, that for me is like one of those red flag conversations, because when I hear it, it's to me like uncle talk. You know how you have that uncle who be at the cookouts just talking that wild food, that hot shit in the corner?
Yeah.
And you on his beer and chew that one rib and you leave him over there now. Like, that's when I hear that, I think I see the plaid shirt, I see the open toe sandals right now in my head. And I'm unfortunate, because what that says to me is, oh, poor dear, you don't even know your worth. You think all your worth is the job that you have or the things that you could or couldn't do for somebody. And that's really sad at the core.
Emotional health is something rarely discussed, but often the most important issue. Free yourself from emotional wounds and discover how to heal your soul from within in as little as 8 weeks. Check out our website today and sign up for more information.
Okay. So I agree with the last part. However, I don't understand. I can't really say I'm gonna look at that conversation or that topic as like a red flag conversation, because I do that date, it's different. Like, first thing you hear from a woman, is, what do you bring to the table? And my response is, nothing, because I really want to see your reaction, because it's like, why does it really have to be? Why does relationship or love have to be a transaction type activity? It sucks, for us men to actually understand that we will only be loved on the condition of what we can provide or what we can offer, and that's like a hard fact. So it's like, I get where your friend is coming from, when I guess society is beating into his head like, well, you have to provide or you have to give something. But it's like, well, what if I don't know at the moment? Are you willing to stick around to find out? Not a lot of women are, especially after we get older. Like, again, the dating pool sucks. It's not about, building or, appreciating the roots of a flower. They want to look at that sunflower and just say it's beautiful. I want somebody that looks really great on paper. They don't want to be there, from start. They want to be there at the finish line, cheering them on, which is, quite, detrimental to a man's health. So I agree where he's coming from, but, those conversations definitely do need to be held. And it gives you the insight of where one's mental is.
Right. And I definitely believe in establishing those things at the beginning of a relationship. However, what if, when she asks you what you're bringing to the table, what if she's simply asking, are you going to provide me with love, affection, attention? Like, why, I feel like men automatically assume that she's speaking financially. Like, if I don't need nothing from you financially, but I want to know that if I'm bringing you love, affection, and attention, I expect that in return. So when I ask you, what are you bringing to the table? Maybe I'm looking for those kind of answers, not, can you pay my bills? Can you fix my car? Not those type of things. So I don't think that men should automatically assume, because then again, you're telling me that you base your self-worth is dependent upon what you can provide for me financially, not, outside of finances.
And then we can control how a man perceives what we say or what we ask. It's like your mindset in that instance. It's your mindset and what you perceive in terms of what we're saying.
like
Ask the questions to get an understanding, so that way you all can be on the same page. That's all. So that way, if she's asking you what you're bringing to the table, and then you ask her what does she mean, you'll know, and then you guys can talk about it, opposed to just thinking it's just material.
So if I could ask Rich, after now hearing the way London has explained the question, would you mind like telling us what you think you bring to the table in that regard?
Oh yeah. I bring the tools, that hammer, the nails, the screws. I bring all of that. Because my whole thing is like I could do one or two things depending on the type of individual that I'm trying to, establish something with. But what means the most to me is the willing to find partnership. So if you can help me, build this table one piece at a time, that is amazing. But if you're not, and you got you already have a table established, for me, I bring a level of conflict, security, compassion. Definitely, very well understanding. I'm a type of person that where I'm gonna just sit back, listen, and just see where I could jump in. But honestly, I feel like, we could build it together. I can build it by myself, but I would like, for you to be here as well.
I like that you mentioned, if her table is already built, then, you'll gladly just have a seat beside her, or you will help build it together. And that was actually bringing me to my next question. I was going to ask you, can a man, or do you feel that a man can pour into a woman's cup that is already full? And when I say a cup that's already full, I'm speaking to the men that kind of look at, oh, if this woman is telling me that she doesn't need me to pay her bills, she doesn't need me to help her fix things around the house, she doesn't need me for that kind of, thing, then I can't do nothing for her. And I feel, again, that's fragile masculinity, because there are so many other things that a man can bring to a woman that does not have to do with finances. And, like you said, stability, affection, compassion, like those are the things that I'm looking for as a woman,
So I'm gonna stick to the cup part, because I think the question that you asked was like a two-part or a trick question. And I say that because you started out, if her cup is already full. Me, if I'm pouring into your cup and it's already full, you want it to flow over. Like it's just not enough. For me, looking at it from a logic perspective, it's like this is no point. It's like you got everything.
Because you guys pour into each other's cup, so it's good if her cup is full.
Right,
because now I have something to give you.
Can I pour into someone's cup that's already full? My answer is no. Why? Because you have everything. Like it's like what room do you have left for me to pour into?
Can you say more, Rich?
I'm sorry.
Can you say more? You said, why does she have everything? Can you say more about that?
Yeah. So it's like the question was, can I pour into someone's cup that's already full, correct?
Yeah.
Logically speaking, no. What more do you need if you already complete? That cup is already full. What more can I do? I'm not gonna look at it as being worthless. I'm just propose that question. Like, can we get a bigger cup? Do you have another cup? But if this is the only cup that's present, then no, I don't believe that I can.
Okay, and I do understand, logically speaking, I understand what you're saying, and I guess I should have phrased the question a little differently. But when I say that a woman's cup that is already full, that's pretty much me kind of playing off of the man's idea of what a full cup is. So when I say that, I'm more so referring to how a man will look at a woman, and if she's already able to provide for herself financially, she doesn't need him for financial stability. He might look at that woman and say, her cup is already full. I can't give her nothing. That's what I mean.
That cup, that's the cup of financial stability, and it's already full. I'm not going to pour into that cup. I'm gonna find another cup that I feel like she needs help in.
Right. Okay. So I and that's kind of, and okay, I see what you're saying, but it kind of was a trick question. So I wanted to see if you were going to address the fact that there are so many other cups to pour into. And you definitely did just there. So kudos. I didn't mean to trick you.
Great listener. I sit back and I, again, try to analyze, so just try to figure out what would be the best course of response.
I like that. I like that. So yeah, I think that this has been a great discussion so far. I have a couple other questions, but you know, I like London and I always say on the show, we don't like to be too structured. We just kind of like to let stuff flow and just, you know, talk. And I think that we've definitely been doing a good job at that with this topic. So really quick, I'll say, let me see. I think I'll go to this little snippet that I have right here. So I want to talk about why women have been forced to be so independent. You know, because in the clip, he said that women are climbing the corporate ladder, but we're losing our families. And I, for one, think that that's just a load of BS. I don't think that women, you know, in the corporate world has anything to do with us losing our families. That can, you know, be so many other things that have contributed to that. Jim Crow, systemic racism, pay disparities. Like, there's so many other things.
I disagree.
Okay, go ahead.
The reason why I disagree is because what T.D. Jakes is basically saying that women are forced to take on the traditional man role these days. Traditional man is always hard working, barely home, but is always providing. Traditional woman is normally at home, being a nurturer, providing for the kids, keeping the house clean, cooking, whatever. Not saying that they don't have their own source of income. He's saying the dynamic is changing, you know, and we need more women to be more closer to their kids versus, you know, focusing on their career. However, it sucks because that's the world we live in at this moment. You know, a woman that's independent has built the mentality to survive by all means necessary for solely responsibility of her children. And while that man is no longer present, or it's just not present at all, you know, it's a domino effect. So in that sermon, he's basically saying men needs to step their game up. We need to go back and be, you know, the man that they we're supposed to be. He wasn't saying that, you know, women are breaking, you know, up there. He's literally holding men accountable. But his tone, I get it. It sounded like he was targeting women, but he was basically trying to have men to hold themselves accountable. That's my perspective on it.
Okay. All right. I definitely felt targeted when he said that. That's definitely what I got from it, because he, you know, his words specifically were women are climbing the corporate ladder, but we're losing our families. And it kind of felt like he was placing us at fault. So
when he said we, he means, man, we're losing our family. Because that on the day of that sermon, it was a Father's Day sermon.
Okay.
So, yeah.
See, it's nice to have a little background on it. Okay. All right. Well, before I move forward, London or Jessica, did you want to say speak anything to that about you know, women climbing the ladder, or why we've been forced to climb that ladder?
I do have thoughts. I think so. I'm so glad you asked this question, because I think first and foremost, it's so irresponsible and intellectually bankrupt for us to have this conversation as if there aren't so many factors that haven't gotten us to where we are in 2022. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's one thing that's another thing that just turns me off when I hear people make these blanket statements that place onus on people who are victims of societal systemic oppression. And so everyone in the world is experiencing these things, and somehow everyone in the world sees these things, and somehow, I don't know how, but somehow we continue to try to place onus on people within our community, in this case, Black women. I don't know how people are talking about Black women having any kind of influence on the state of the Black family outside of being able to manage, name, address, and navigate their own trauma, and how that trauma bleeds onto the people they're responsible for, which in most cases is children. That to me is a conversation we can have, because that to me is something that people are in control of. They can't control their trauma, but they can control how they navigate it, whether or not they're able to do the work to like just push and move through it. But the part that was probably most disappointing about that piece that I saw was the lack of responsibility in terms of, number one, if nobody ever cared 2 years ago, so many things happened that required everyone to at least pretend that they cared. And so the reason I say pretend that they cared is because if you're doing the actual work, then you're coming into a place in your life where you're trying to understand how we got here. In terms of women, these conversations about Black women and the Black family, all these things existed before. I remember at Morgan State University, there was a person of a very controversial, honey, hotep, dripping in castor oil and all the things, came to the campus to tell us how the Black family was dying and Black women and abortions and y'all are killing it, you're ruining us and all those things. And so, and that was all the way back in like 2014. People have been having these conversations, and I understood why then people weren't doing the work, because maybe they were busy and caught up and comfortable. I feel like now at this point, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing the work to understand why and how we are where we are. And in the case of Black women, right, you talked about climbing the corporate ladder. I don't even see it that way. I see it as you are trying to survive. I am just trying to live. I'm just trying to literally not die, not be killed, or not take myself up out of here. And a part of that is I go to this job, maybe because it keeps me okay. Maybe because getting up and going to this job is the thing that keeps me pushing every day, because I have something I have to go do. Maybe I go up to this job because rent is due. Because I don't know about you, but up here in New York State, you can't not have a job and a scam on the side. Maybe people are going up to their job because kids have this thing where they like to eat food, and food costs money. So I don't see it as I'm climbing the corporate ladder, and I got on a pair of pumps and I'm pushing through the office in red lipstick. I see it as I go up to this job and I laugh at jokes that are not funny that my boss makes, because rent is due and I gotta eat and all those other things because I'm trying to survive. That's what survival looks like for most Black women in 2022, if they have means and access to be able to even get a job. So that's one. Two, though, I feel like in terms of family, I don't view family in that very traditional way. And I recognize why some people feel the need to. But again, in talking about gender, one of the things I said on my story was gender, in most ways, gender and my own gender doesn't serve me. I identify as a woman, but in many ways, it just does not serve me. And one of the ways it doesn't serve me is conversations about people having these like accusations that they project onto Black women without even holding space for us in terms of what we've experienced. So Black women are now being made to be responsible for systemic oppression, in that we've ruined the Black family because we got our asses up and went to work when we had to. Not because we literally had to. And the other thing about the conversation that like I find to be duplicitous is, even in the, like, we were literally just talking about people feel like you want what they got, and people feel like maybe your intentions aren't pure, and they got people out here trying to protect their $70,000 job because obviously you're going to come take their pension or whatever it is that people think that is going to happen. And so when people get up and go get their own job and provide for themselves, we have these conversations. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of Black woman existence and Black femme existence, it's not a cakewalk. It's not that people are getting up and making their way downtown and now you can afford nice bags and you're living your best life. Even in your corporate job at your cubicle, you are susceptible to insurmountable amounts of violence.
Right.
Everything that can happen from the moment you pull up into that parking lot is usually violent. And even in being at work, you have to survive. So it's disheartening to me that when you come home and come back into community, people don't even hold space to the fact that you just had to go to war to go to your job. You just had to fight all kinds of microaggressions and all kinds of stuff. And when you get back into a place where you're supposed to feel like people get me here, people understand me here. Not only do people not understand you, they're working double time to not understand you. And now they're accusing you of dismantling Black families, when Black family can look like so many things. What if my Black family is two women and cooking and mothering and nurturing and building a house and cleaning a house? What if that's not my Black family? What if my Black family is me and my dog? What if my Black family is me and my wife? What if my Black family is me and my non-binary spouse? And what if neither one of us don't cook nothing? And what if we don't cook? What if we got a maid that come up in here twice a week? Is that us dismantling the Black family, or is that us just existing and trying to survive in the world? I feel like very rarely, let me be honest, I don't think I've ever in my whole life heard anybody say the Black man is ruining the Black family, or the Black man is negatively impacting the Black family when he blah, 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 blah. I've just never heard that. There's like a little bit of chatter that happens on the side about like when people talk about Black women and families, somebody might say like, and what about the sick? What about the fathers? What about the fathers who leave? But it never really goes deeper into what about other things. But I'm not saying that because my investment is trying to figure out how we ruin the Black family, because white supremacy is what is actively trying to kill Black people and therefore Black families. So there's no point in trying to say you did this, you did this, you did that. But if you're gonna have those conversations, I feel like there's a level of integrity that you have to come with. And so I'm gonna wrap it up. What I found most disheartening about that sermon was because it was a sermon in front of a church for people who came here to get healing from whatever, or solace, or peace of mind, or whatever. I don't know what happens in that building, because I ain't never been to that building. But I know for a fact, most people did not get up out their houses, out their beds, to come hear about who doing this and who ain't doing this. And I know that's true because somebody saw fit to take that clip and send it somewhere else. Because in their mind, they said, girl, you wouldn't believe this. So somebody in the room, it didn't serve them. So for me, you have a responsibility. When we have these conversations, everyone feels like because they have a mouth and maybe because they have a gender identity, they can then speak on things. And I know our parents teach us that our opinions matter. But when you are in front of a room and you're holding a particular position, I feel like your responsibility changes. So at the front of that room, there was a heightened level of responsibility. And I feel like if it wasn't a situation where you could choose your words in a way that was going to be careful and was going to hold everyone in that room with care, then it isn't the conversation for the moment. Because I know for myself, everything about it was like, oh no, this is not it.
That literally changes the whole dynamic of the entire situation, because it's like, go back to your first statement where you said you've never heard anybody say, Black men are tearing the community in Black homes. My question to you is like, have you actually stepped into like a fraternity or like a brotherhood and sat there in any of those meetings? I don't believe you have, because it's like,
I'm not a man. I can't get into a fraternity.
Right, so then you can't really say. I mean, then you can't. Or I'm not gonna say you can't. You shouldn't really worry about hearing that, because again, I still believe that what T.D. Jakes was saying was that he was just trying to hold the Black men accountable for the part that they play in society. He wasn't trying to target anybody or single anybody out. I mean, you can't. It's like I can't sit here and talk directly to my boys, and I have my lady right here, and I'm saying some things to my boys, to bring them up, hold them accountable, and then feel bad because I say something that my lady is not going to agree with. I mean, it's not for her to agree with, because we men, we have a different role or a different set of expectations, in society. So it's like I can't sugarcoat what really needs to be said, because it's going to hurt or affect somebody else. So I don't think that he should be accountable for hurting somebody else's feelings. We can't control people's feelings, because feelings are definitely, one, unpredictable, and two, temporary. So it's like, it started in 2008 when Obama definitely signed that bill for same-sex marriage. That was also the same time where the Me Too moment, and then everybody, just started coming out, really just voicing their opinions. So we have to look at how far things have changed, far greater than 2014, where, people are really just voicing themselves, and people that are holding some type of stature are getting ridiculed for actually just,
Wait, Rich, I'm saying, in terms of, you said I shouldn't worry about, right? Mm-hmm. You said you felt like he was trying to hold Black men accountable. When someone speaks my name, I get to talk, and so I need to be worried about it. You understand? If the conversation is about holding Black men accountable, there's no reason why what I heard was someone placing onus on Black women. And so once someone calls my name, I'm not worried, right? The business I mind is my own, and I'm a Black woman. So that's the first thing I wanted to say and be clear about is, anytime I hear someone speaking on Black women's experiences or what Black women are doing, I have a right and an investment. And you talked about how, because I'm not, the reason why I said I'm not in a fraternity is because obviously I'm not in a fraternity, but it doesn't mean that I don't have access to men. I was raised and reared by Black men. I'm around Black men. I'm in community with Black men every single day. I've dated Black men. And so I don't understand what it means to be a man. But certainly I do have relationship with men, especially because I have been reared, raised, dated, and loved by men, by Black men specifically. So what I'm saying is, earlier in this conversation, you saw fit to ask questions about femininity, and you also saw fit to talk about what you're attracted to in regards to femininity, and which you talked about the table. And when we talk about, I feel like women think, and when women talk about the table, they're saying, right? It's not you speaking as if you are a woman and you trying to fill in the shoes of a woman. It's just you talking about your experience with women. I'm talking about my experiences with women, and they're valid, even though I'm not a man, because I'm someone who's in community with Black men. And when Black men require my presence, I show up every time. So I'm going to continue to talk about Black men. I'm not speaking from a position of someone who doesn't have experience. Just because I don't have a penis and or associate and or identify as a man doesn't mean that my experiences and my ability to speak to the subject is invalid, even though I'm not a member of a Black male fraternity, which is literally illegal and impossible. The other piece I wanted to talk about was in regard to him trying to hold Black men accountable, right? If that is the conversation that he wanted to have, there's so many ways that it could have happened that didn't require us to even be talking about people going to work and getting away from family. That's because people often ascribe certain kinds of behavior and actions to gender. When we talk about Black women, we usually start talking about the gender and the family and the house and the job and all these different things, because that's where conversation takes us now. And in turn, we have to begin talking about men. So I'm saying all this to say that my disappointment is that anyone who's not ready to have these conversations, even like just now, you told me that because I'm not sitting at tables with Black men in fraternities, I'm not able to speak to this subject when I am literally in community with Black men. The closest proximity that Black men have to solidarity and safeness and a confidant is literally me, outside of themselves. And so if I can't speak to my experiences with the Black men, then that means that Black men are no longer a safe space for me either. I'm not invested in telling you.
Can I interrupt really quick?
Yeah.
So the reason why I wanted to interrupt, because now I'm about to forget my thoughts. So really, for one, I don't think what he said was that you can't state your opinion. What he said is that you aren't there and you aren't present, you aren't around the other men when they're having this discussion. And then the other question I wanted to ask you is, do you know the name of the sermon that he was preaching?
No, I don't.
And I don't know why I asked is because the name of it is Real Men Pour In. What he's saying is, he's not saying that we shouldn't be in the workforce. What he said was, we Black men, not even Black men, just men, period, should be pouring in to their women, not the other way around, not taking away from their women. So the only thing I say is to listen to it, because the way the media works is sometimes they'll take the ugliest part of something and they'll make it sound really bad. But if you listen to the actual sermon, you'll hear what he's saying and the reason why that part stuck out. And then my last point, are you saying that we're all responsible for how somebody else feels based off of what we say? Because I don't feel that I should be responsible for the way you're perceiving what I say to you. I can't control where your mindset is at. I can be at a different space in my life and I may be able to understand things a bit different. And you may be at a different space in your life where you're able to understand things a little bit different. So now if I say something that offends you, perhaps the way you're receiving it in that moment is not the way it should be received. And that's when questions should be asked again, just so that there's clarity.
So 3 things. 1, I was clear. The language was, I shouldn't worry about. And I'm trying to be clear that I think I should worry about anything that affects both myself and the people I'm in community with. The second piece was, I don't disagree that his messaging, his intention might have been to hold Black men accountable. What I'm saying is, somehow we veered away from that. The clip exists because we veered away from it. There was no reason to keep the conversation about Black women and their purpose and their work and what they're doing or not doing needs to happen in a conversation about accountability, because the thing about accountability is it's for you. No one can make you take accountability. You have to consent to it. And so it doesn't have to involve anyone else. It just has to involve the person or the people or the group or whatever. So that's what I was trying to name was, if the conversation was about accountability for Black men, I love that for Black men. It does not have to not only include Black women, but it also does not have to present in a way that feels disparaging to Black women.
I mean, you can't control what a person says. Yeah, so if you receive it in that way, then that's on you. And that's where accountability comes in. So
well, that's the last question you asked, and I want to answer it, right? Mm-hmm. Accountability is about consent. You can't control what somebody would say to you, what somebody would do to you. I can't control somebody kick me in my face right now while I'm sitting in my car, right? What I can try to do is ask them to be accountable for it. So if tomorrow I called TD Jakes and said, hey, I didn't quite appreciate the way the sermon came off to me, it hit my ear wrong, I'd like you to be accountable, I'd like you to apologize, or I'd like you to help me understand what was said, I'd like you to talk to me, whatever. He could hang up the phone because accountability is about consent. He could choose not to consent to that conversation, to being accountable. So that's understood. I understand that anybody could do anything. But if we're talking about, and I'm not talking about human beings in general, in terms of Black people specifically, even though I feel like I don't owe nobody nothing in this world, there's a level of care and kindness, and there's something that I feel like I owe to other Black people, because I feel like that's just where we are as community, right? I may not owe you in terms of, I don't feel like when I walk into a room, I have to say hi to everybody because I owe everyone kindness or niceness. But when I see Black people in spaces, I feel like I owe you solidarity in some way. And so what I'm trying to name is, in terms of the way people treat me, what they say to me, I obviously can't control that. But I'm not talking about any and everybody. I'm talking about community. I'm talking about people who I'm trying to give my solidarity to. I'm trying to love up on. I'm trying to give things to, because I love them that deeply. But I also recognize that we in this thing together. If they choose not to give it to me, that's fine. And that's why every day people posture themselves in a way that requires me to move myself away from them. If someone says, I did it and you got to just eat it, that's cool, because what I understand is we're not in community. You don't rock with me. And now I can be the most irresponsible version of myself with you. I'm not speaking from that regard, because if that's the case, we're talking about people in the street. I'm not regarding Black men as people in the street, or y'all even in this conversation as folks on the street. I'm talking about, these are people who I think I'm trying to move towards something with. We're in a principal struggle because we're in community with each other, and I'm trying to get to a space where we can at least move forward progressively, be together in a way that feels good. So I'm saying anybody can say anything. It's not that he's responsible to me. When I said responsibility, I meant when you're going into certain spaces, your responsibility changes based on your role. I'm a teacher. So when I stand at the front of a classroom and say, hey, class, I came here today to teach, my responsibility changes. I'm not just Jessica, I'm not a teacher. People are trying to get things from me. They came here to get something from me, and I told them I could give it to them. So my responsibility changes, which means if I go in the front of a classroom, also in a teacher-student relationship, there's the power dynamic. In a pastor's relationship with the members of their congregation, there's a power dynamic that changes, because people feel like I'm coming to you to get something because you're the means by which I can get it. You're the vessel. And so if you're at the front of that room, there's a responsibility that you have, which is why if your pastor went in the front of the room and was talking crazy, you would be saying, well, dang, this is not right, because there's at least a responsibility they have to the members of that congregation, that they know, I'm gonna try to hold you with safety. That's what I meant when I said responsibility. In terms of, if maybe I'm mishearing it, if maybe what I'm hearing and what I saw and what I've been reading is not exactly what the intention was, that's understandable. What I'm just saying is, as human beings, we all make mistakes. My hope is that as we all continue to move through life, we recognize that when you hold a certain position and you take that position, your responsibility changes, and then you have to be even more intentional than you were when it comes to the language that you choose to use. And then to the back piece that you were just talking about, people may ask for accountability. Whether or not you choose to give it is your prerogative, your business, but they may ask for it because you may have harmed them, right? So that conversation is potentially harmful for any Black woman who heard it, who then has to talk about why they're worthy in this world outside of aiding men in building families. That's violent, that's harmful. People having to defend why they're getting up and going to work every day because systemic oppression is literally pulling them by the back of their knotless braids, that's a kind of violence. And so I'm saying all this to say, that's what I'm talking about in terms of your responsibility changing. And then when you do something, when you step in it, which we all do, we all make human mistakes. Someone may come and ask you for accountability, and you have a choice to give it to them. And that's what I'm talking about. I have no investment in whether or not he's going to be accountable, because I can't make him. But I'm just saying, in this conversation, for whoever's listening to it in the world, and even for myself, I think that's what we can do. Now we're talking about it on a podcast, but in terms of what the breadcrumb is for me, I'm speaking out loud to myself. When I step in it, because I'm human, when the people may come and ask for accountability, because when I held my position, I behaved irresponsibly, and now this is a teachable moment for me.
I will just say that this is definitely a topic that can be discussed for quite some time, and I wish that we could keep this going, and shoot, we might have to do a part 3, but I don't know. But I definitely just want to say that I have taken something from Jessica, I've taken something from Rich, I've taken something from London, I've of course spoke my piece on it, and I just think that we we all got a lot to say about this. And like I said, it's something that can be talked about for quite some time. But we don't want to make this a 2-hour show. So I think that with everything that's been said, we're going to kind of try to wrap it up here. Rich, I see your hand is up, so I'm going to let you speak your final piece. And then, yeah, we'll go ahead and close out.
All right, it's going to be real quick. I really say I definitely do appreciate everyone's perspective as well as their opinion. One thing that, that really is going to make everything work for everyone to be on the same accord is just understanding that, you can be great by yourself. You can do everything by yourself, but it's even better, bigger, better, and stronger when you have someone else that's on the same page with you. So, it's not about accountability or, how one's offended or, controlling someone's emotions. It's all about gaining a sense of understanding and learning how to move forward.
Jessica, you had a lot to say, and I sincerely want to thank you for being here. Is there any final words that you want to throw in before we wrap up this episode?
I was happy to join this conversation, and I still am happy to have participated in this conversation because, again, everything that happened is something that I can learn from, and that I can then turnkey to the people who rely on me to teach them something. But I'm going to revisit all that's been said, and maybe there's something that I can turnkey that Rich even offered to me. I hope that my intention is clear in that I am literally a learner, and I'm actively learning even right now. But I really appreciate y'all at least holding space for this conversation and trying to be intentional to keep it safe. I'm going to go ahead and head out, but I very much hope that there's something here that I can give to people who I hope can make the world a better place, as I said earlier.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Thank you so much, Jessica. All right. Well, in our final minute, again, thank you, Rich. Thank you, Jessica, for joining us. This has been quite an episode. And again, we thank you for just coming on and giving your perspective and your thoughts. And we really appreciate, because, London and I are always here talking. So it's nice to hear from some other people and just hear some other perspectives. So thank you again, Rich. Thank you to our listeners for joining in. Sorry that this was such a lengthy little episode, but it was a good one. So
it was great.
I hope that you guys are tuning in. I enjoyed it, definitely. So we are almost, like I said, wrapping up the season. We got one more episode to go, so make sure you stay tuned. Follow us, reach out if you have any comments, if you want to give your take on this, topic that we've been talking about. But other than that, everybody have a good night, good day, whatever time it is, wherever you're listening. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of Empower Her podcast.
Night, y'all.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks, Rich.
3, 2, 1.